Officially call this meeting to order. Start with introductions. It's Matt Caldy, I'm the vice chair.
Manawana Keeley, I'm the O'Neill fellow.
Mike Litwin, commissioner.
Linda Thompson, liaison. Megan Murphy, commissioner.
David Parker, commissioner.
Carrie Albright, commissioner.
Commissioner.
So thank you, everybody, for being here. Next, we have approval of minutes. We have both October's and November's minutes that we can vote to approve. Did everyone get a chance to look at those?
Do we do them together or separately?
Oh, I think we probably need to vote on each, right?
Probably.
Do we have a quorum?
We do just have quorum. It's six present.
I have a question. If I wasn't here at the last meeting, is it best for me to abstain from approving since I don't know one way or another how active they were? Does that hurt in our quorum conversation?
No, quorum's still okay. By all means, you can abstain, even if you were here, if you wanted to. That's always an option. We have enough to vote. If you're not comfortable saying whether they accurately reflect our meeting or not because you didn't attend it, feel free to abstain. But we'll start with the October minutes.
Motion to approve the October minutes.
Second, thank you. Now, we don't have anyone online. Do we still do a roll call?
Yes.
Okay. All right, let's start to my left with Mike.
Yes.
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 Yeah.
This is
It
October.
was October.
I'll abstain because I wasn't here.
I also vote yes. We also entertain a motion for
So now-
November's minute.
Someone.
Do we have a second? Do in the same order, starting with Mike?
Yes.
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 I'll abstain.
Yes.
I also vote yes. Both sets of minutes pass, despite the abstentions. Excellent. Next, we move on to public comment. Any members of the public like to comment tonight? You have up to 5 minutes. See anything on Zoom, as we have none in the room?
Nope. Anything from you, Jim?
We can always circle back if he does decide that he would like to comment, but in the meantime, I suppose we'll move on to old business. First item of old business is update from Land Planning Working Group, ECPC, regarding the UDO updates. Mike, would you like to speak about that?
Sure. Forgot my glasses, but I'll do my best. Several days ago, I sent around the most recent version of the draft with incorporated comments that I've had from a couple of people. Since then, I got some feedback from Linda as well. So there are two or three actually, I think, items that needed clarification, and we need to discuss some of them. So I'll just start from the top. One item was we should somehow reflect the tree commission's work on tree lists into the UDO tree list. Linda said she doesn't like the TC, the tree commission tree list. So I guess the discussion would be, should we just mention it as an input, or should we delete it entirely?
Why don't you like it though?
Well, first of all, it's very drafty. They don't have a real list yet, but they have, it's kind of like the old, it looks like a list from the old tree manual, and it's got a lot of trees in it that are exotic. And not enough native trees.
Doesn't sound like what we were talking about the last time I was on the treatment.
Well, it's what I got last time, and I really believe, without being at their meetings, that they've been talking about updating it, and that what I got is not that update, but they are still not ready.
Okay.
Okay.
So I just said, you know, my suggestion was just to scratch that, because the other thing is, when we few months ago, when the UDO was updated, the, urban forester, basically made those updates and didn't consult the tree commission. So we've got like 3 different, lists going on. And I've completed a list of the trees. I'm not quite finished with the forbs. It's gonna be a massive list, but, I am going to send it around to the experts that I know in town for comment. But I just thought that, to me, I wouldn't want to reflect necessarily the most recent draft that I got from the tree commission.
Okay,
If I recall correctly from Dania's updates, they hope to update the UDO once they have the list, isn't that correct?
That is what they hope, but that's not what's gonna happen.
Okay.
I've already been told that.
I just thought we could let them worry about trying to get it in the UDO. instead of
Right,
us.
It would be too complicated with them owning part of what the UDO has to enforce and et cetera. So, I've been told that that's not gonna happen. But I'm all over having input from them. You know, I just don't want a bunch of, exotic trees.
So you say input's okay, but not to use their list specifically.
Oh, I absolutely want their input.
Okay,
Yes, I
input.
would, yes,
Well,
yes.
that's kind of how this is worded, to reflect recent input, but I could strike recent.
Oh, input, oh, no, that's fine,
Okay.
I think it would be irresponsible to come up with a tree, for me to come up with a tree list without consulting the tree commission.
So then it would say, update total plant list to reflect, pretty much what it says already, input from the tree commission.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. So,
Linda, are any of the extreme invasives still on the list?
Now, say it again, I didn't
Are any of the
understand.
extremely aggressive invasives on the list?
Are there aggressive invasives on the list? They're on the invasive list.
But no, I mean on the approved list.
There's no invasives on the approved list. Zero, zilch. Even if they're thinking about being invasive, they're not on the approved list,
We don't need any more.
right?
when it's free, it's not on the list.
Yeah.
So that brings us to the next item, which is also about tree lists. Matt made this comment about, how do we define non-native species? If that's going to be a criterion for what we're asking to be put on the list or not. Does non-native mean non-native to the eastern US? Does it mean non-native to this region of the country, or does it mean non-native to Monroe County?
Right, well, that was interesting because I looked it up in the UDO, the definitions, and there was not a definition for non-native, but there was a definition for native. And it was not a good definition. It said something that was local to Bloomington. And that's, you know, that's not the definition. I've written a definition in, actually in a bunch of the old ECPC memos that I can drag back up for what is native, a definition for native, because limiting to it, Bloomington, Indiana is, I don't know where that came from.
Regional, not hyper local.
What I said, what I always called it was to the Seco region.
you don't want the county even because, for example, the only conifer native to this county, according to Dean, who wrote the book on trees of Indiana, the only native conifer in this county is eastern white cedar, red cedar, juniperus virginiana.
But then there's cypress, which is not native here, but it is native about 50 miles south of here.
Right, yeah.
So,
right,
Well, and white pines are native in northern Indiana, but
Sure.
not necessarily here,
not in this county.
right?
Also native in
So, I mean,
Tennessee.
the question is up for discussion.
The other thing I worried about a little bit is that, the native may become somewhat of a moving target as climate change alters landscapes.
Right,
Part of what I was looking into is what trees are native to just south of us, because that could be our climate within a decade or two. I'd read things from arborists up in the New England area, adding red buds and others that are traditionally not up there, just kind of preparing for
Right.
adaptation. So I didn't know if there would be what we would now think of as non-native trees that would actually be a great investment in the future of Bloomington's street trees, for example. I don't have enough information to say what that would be. I just wanted to put it out there.
Right, well, cypress is a good example, because, you know, there's cypress, wetlands down in southern Indiana. But, and they are moving up here, they grow here great. It's a great tree, but, they are,
In the US, or not, in North America, rather, as well as in Europe, the flora is definitely moving, as is the fauna. So the Parks Department has been planting things with the southern influence. Because of expected climate change.
mhm,
what about Osage orange? That's from further south. My backyard, my back boundary has 4 of them, it used to have 5. And an arborist told me once there was a mile-long string of them in the city that were planted as hedge, because they're called, the fruits are called hedge apples.
mhm.
And they were planted because they're very tiny, and when they're young, they make a great hedge. And so I've got some of those that are left from this mile-long bunch of them, and I've seen them further south from my place too.
let me ask you this, Linda, this was your original comment to the planning department, remove non-native trees from this, street tree list that were added to the last UDO. That's the way it's worded.
What now, say it again?
Remove non-native trees
Oh.
from the street tree list that were added to the last UDO.
Yes, that's true.
Wonder, could we just say invasive species instead of non-native?
No, there was no invasive species.
How do we clear that up? We don't know what native species, non-native species means. That's the issue.
Well, you know, when they come from China, they're clearly not native.
We don't want to find it to be not originally from the US then? Not from the eastern US?
This also isn't an extensive list. The wording there suggested specifically remove the ones that they've added to the UDO most recently. Do you know what those are? And
I couldn't rattle them off, you know, on my head, but there's not very many. It's not an extensive list.
right, I was just trying to draw a distinction between whether it's removing all non-natives or whether it's, hey, these trees you added, please take them off.
That is what I was thinking.
Okay.
And there's only, you know, there's probably 5 or 6. And I've talked to the new urban forester about it, and he's good with getting rid of some of them, and he was kind of on the fence about others. I haven't gotten anything definite from him yet. But it is not an extensive list.
So can we just say remove trees that were added at the last UDO?
Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
So there's
solve it.
a note here about USDA.
No, wait, I'm sorry, Dave, that won't solve it, because she added a bunch of oak trees too. It's just the non-native,
We say as just like as defined by, like remove the non-native as defined by the tree commissioner or whatever from the last update.
Somebody mentioned something about using the USDA's official list of non-native species. I don't know if that's a regional list or what it is.
I don't know what that is. But basically, it's been in this ecoregion. No,
That would work, I guess. I don't know what our ecoregion is.
it's defined. It's shown on a map. Heather would know.
How far? How big is it?
It's not giant because, I mean, the flora and fauna are really different between here and our uplands and say, for instance, northern Indiana.
Yeah, well,
I mean, it sounds like for this, like paragraph in this document, what we're saying is remove the 5 or 6 specific species that were added last year that are non-native. Should move them from the list.
Yeah.
Is it working for us just to like grab the names of those?
And when we can get them, it's right, I mean, it's right there, I just don't have them on
if
top
you
of my
do
head.
that list of species you want removed,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
specifically by name, then we don't have
Okay,
to use an adjective. Good.
because she added a bunch of oak trees that, I didn't really realize that grew around here, and so I think that's great, the more oaks, the better.
Got that solved. One more thing here. Oh, but just as a note. Item number 6, excuse me, item number 3, for this, the environmentally sensitive areas, have conservation easements, and then there's one to add, and preservation. So that's kind of another.
Right, and there's areas and there's easements,
Right,
because some of them are areas, but if they're over an acre, then they have to be an
yeah,
easement.
the easement supposedly is a contract, for this area, it's just one on the maps.
Mhm.
Okay, that's, we don't have to discuss that. Here's one more that we need to discuss. Correct, this is number 6 under green infrastructure. Correct the inconsistency regarding when green infrastructure is required in parking lots. And question, somebody questioned, can we be more specific about that? Is that possible? Yeah, you said in your comments that you couldn't provide the details.
So what I did, I provided the citations in the UBO tonight, but at the time, I just didn't have time to go through them and like actually rewrite it. And, I could maybe, I could maybe do that.
Could you refresh my memory on what the inconsistencies are?
One says if the parking lot has over 100 cars, they have to put green infrastructure in, something like that.
Right, yeah, I know we discussed, recommending that they reduce that threshold.
Right, well,
I just-
another place says anything, any parking lot with like more than 4 or 7 spots has to do it. And then there's a third spot that cites one of those. So, they're just really inconsistent.
We're probably asking the same question. Do we want to try to define what we think it should be rather than just saying fix the inconsistency? Because in that case, they could choose, okay, every 100 then.
Well, yeah, I mean, giving your opinion on that would definitely,
We've got something we depend on you for either way. Because I don't think
Right.
Any of us understands it all.
okay,
Have an opinion.
Could we say like correct the inconsistency regarding when green infrastructure is required in parking lots by requiring it to be every blank space? It's like actually kind of take that first half of the sentence and our recommendation for the others.
right, and you can do that, or, hopefully, as soon as I get finished with this plant list, that's the next thing I will work on, but, we got the holidays coming up, and the world stands still during the holidays.
So you can provide.
I think I can,
Okay.
yes.
Do you know which one they enforce right now?
Nobody enforces any of them right now. And that's a question also, who to enforce, because really, green infrastructure is, the purview of CBU. But this is written in the UDO. So when I asked CBU if they were enforcing it, they didn't even know it was there. So, the whole thing is rather beefed up.
Not high priority. They'll provide something that we can use.
Okay.
It just highlights what the inconsistencies are. So that's everything, as far as changes go. Do you want to consider that amendments to the draft and vote on it with the assumption that we will incorporate those amendments? Changes, I won't say amendments, changes.
I think it's small enough changes that I feel comfortable doing that. The rest of the commission is as well.
We can always, add more things when we have time. Our timeline is very nebulous. Now all I know is sometime in January. So, providing something is better than nothing, and then if there's time, we can add things on, I would say.
Okay,
But it'd be best to approve it now.
that way if it's early in January, they're able to submit it and they'll say, hey, we already have an approved document.
Right.
That's good about timeline. Well, in that case, I'll move that we, through sending this UDO recommendations to the planning department, with the understanding that we will incorporate the language that we already reviewed.
Second,
Second. We will go around the room again, Mike.
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
yes,
Good.
vote yes as well, passes unanimously.
Thank you for leading that one.
Yes, indeed. Next item of old business would be the update from Biodiversity Working Group regarding the Habitat Connectivity Plan. I don't know how much Sam spoke to anyone about that exactly. Basically, Alana and I were kind of resurrecting the mapping project that the previous intern had been working on, realized it works fine. We've been I think a whopping 3 participants. I was not a part of the Biodiversity Working Group, so I don't know exactly how much went into this, but it seemed like it was a big project that was worked on over a long period of time, and then there was no real release, no real way of trying to get participation from the community. So I just kind of wanted to reopen the dialogue on, are we okay with this project as it ended, or would we like to try to promote it? And if so, how would we like to do that? Whether that's Lucy's Facebook page, brochures. I mean, honestly, opening it up to discussion, because people could do anything, including going door to door in the most important neighborhoods if they so choose. I just thought it was interesting that the project was completed, but then never really, we didn't really do anything with it. So that was what I wanted to discuss in that one.
Well, I mean, I think it's really exciting. I think there are a lot of ways that we can kind of talk about how to keep it alive and active and people participating in it. I know that when we talk about outreach, part of it is if we're cabling at an event or we're part of a gathering people. What is the thing that we are trying to keep engaged with the Bloomington community of, like, do you sign up or do you do something, do you plan something? And so I think that that's a really easy one for us to make a priority, and how we talk about it, how easy it is to access it and do things like that. I don't know if you guys reached out to any like schools or like homeschool networks, anything like that, to actually like have this be something that young people can engage in as far as like understanding it and trying to like get involved, and or other community organizations, things like that. Basically just like saying, hey, there's something you can do and it's gonna tie us all together and all those other things. But I think that would make sense too.
Convince their parents to plant a tree.
Exactly. And then just bring them over to the tree trail and the giveaways and all those things. So I don't know, that's kind of what I think. And I don't know how much we've explored how we would reach out to different groups or what the protocol is for reaching out to school and things like that. But I think that that's an easy way to get the community involved on a lot of different levels.
Well, one thing I just learned yesterday from, the hand department, they put out a, neighborhood newsletter. And they are now calling for any groups to put an article in there. So, we should write something that's quite like the pledge probably. And, that will go out to neighborhood associations. But it seems to me that the reason this hasn't gotten off the ground is because we have to do outreach like almost individually.
Yeah, one of the things that the Because did at their meeting, they were talking about how they're going to be trying to work with neighborhood associations on their, monitoring emissions, et cetera, and getting people involved. I think that, in the neighborhoods I live in, there are some people that are really strong, involved with parks, et cetera, and, working with, the idea of biodiversity in general, and, particularly invasive plants. But one of the thoughts I have is also thinking of, North County School Corporation, because, schools like Childs situated, or where they're situated is on some of our major corridors, and but I mean, we could individually and work with also some of the MCIR's people and parks people perhaps, and because all it seems parks nature people are well on board about the idea of protecting the biodiversity.
Right, they just don't know to fill out, the form and put a dot on the map.
Yeah, I like the idea of the hand newsletter, and I think as well as sending something to MC Iris, right? So people who already care about and probably do these things.
Right.
But also do tabling at farmers markets or something like where, again, attract a lot of people who likely are invested in this. And I know that one issue that we had before was the link on the brochures, like when we're actually handing something to people. But we could easily make it have the pledge with a QR code at the bottom or something.
It was also a pretty intimidating like, packet instead of just
Yes.
one little piece of paper. Yeah, even if you did take the painstaking amount of time to type that URL and it didn't work. So we certainly need to work out either a tiny URL or a QR code or both, but I think it could be pretty succinctly described on a little brochure that we could walk away with and not have a packet.
I made QR codes and tiny URLs a long time ago and have them in a past email that I sent to Ben and maybe a couple other folks that I can, if we're ready to modify. That's already done. Great.
Yeah,
So is everybody here registered there yet?
I did mark mine on there, maybe the fourth, but just. I'm not in the highest priority areas, but it did still feel good to just put in there, okay. Converted
I need more
tenth of an acre.
You what?
I need more native plants before I do it. But I shared my link with my friends.
Well, I should be too, and trying to get much else to go along with the idea of redoing our landscape so it is invasive free on our own property. But one of the challenges is we do have some really highly invasive things moving into the neighborhoods, and I'm alarmed by garlic mustard, Japanese spiltgrass, and of course Calvary pear. And I'm seeing in Southeast Park this past week, I saw how the Calvary pear is more present now than it was last year.
But, Southeast Park now has a lot of native plants that it didn't have a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
And see, the beauty about this is that even if you don't have very many native plants, if you've got one white oak, that counts. Because nobody in town, you know, that has a city lot can have an entire habitat.
all right.
So the whole point of getting everybody to join together is that if you have a white oak, maybe Mike next door has a spice bush.
Yeah.
So Linda, you're making me think about this hand newsletter, and if we want to write something up to share. Who would be interested in writing that, or who's on the diversity group, working group that we could push into the limelight?
They would have given me a few weeks.
Right, and I don't think she put any like limitations on words or anything. She included a schedule of, you have to have it turned in by this date in order for it to be published by that date. She gave that for the entire year, and I meant to send all that on to you, and I still will, I just haven't had time in the last 2 days.
Yeah, I don't see the item as particularly time sensitive. This was my equivalent of, you know, bumping something in the thread, like, hey, let's not forget about this thing. Do we want to promote it? I assumed we wanted to promote it. So it could be a gradual process. People could, you know, a pair of people could decide they're going to make the brochure together. Someone could do a write-up for the hand publication, any little step to just gradually.
Right, it'd probably be best not to do it immediately anyway, because nobody's paying attention to that at the holiday time.
You know, it's
Yeah.
planting in January.
Yeah.
I do think though that, yeah, we're preparing for the springtime, and everyone's got anything on their mind, you know, for sale.
We'll start having events. We could then distribute literature at again, and we'll be ready.
Doesn't, Master Gardeners have a spring plant
Yes.
thing coming up? That would be a good place for us to table and, you know, even, you know, have poster
Right.
board type.
Right, we've tabled there before, and, you know, we could, they get a good turnout, so, and the right crowd that we would want to be addressing, so, you know, we can table there again and focus on the connectivity plan.
And I attended that thing. And that's how I ended up volunteering with MC Iris. Was, and talked to Ellen and Jillian, and they got me both.
Yeah, I think we have a good idea that we're not done with the connectivity plan, that we would like to still promote this further, even if there aren't a ton of immediate actionable items. We'll just keep sticking it on the agenda and talking about it, emailing about it, deciding, you know, what ways we want to promote it. I know that some actions are big and some are small. If we were to put it on our Facebook page, yeah, that doesn't have a ton of people, but hey, maybe we get a few more tags on it. Just kind of one step at a time as we can, and then see what good gets done.
I think that's a good point. I think if we can take a note for it on our next meeting agenda, that'd be, I think, perfect time to talk about it. I'm just thinking about the concept of all the other organizations and commission and, you know, groups that we would do so much with right now, knowing that if we say, hey, we're trying to get people involved, the fact that they all have so many other people they interact with, I do feel like this is something that if we can start passing along, there's a good chance we'll get a lot more out of it.
I agree.
Just a thought, yesterday, about the time I was going to head home from Southeast Park, one of the that senior citizens lady, was walking by, was wondering what I was, what I was removing. And I talked with her briefly on, she, like me, observed the fact that, since starting to work in Southeast Park, this last spring, seeing, trillium and some of the other wildflowers, instead of just seeing, Asian bush honeysuckle along the trail, meant something to her, which I took that as motivation for the work that we've been doing and what we'd like for the community to be like.
It's good to hear. It's a long-term project. With that, I'm gonna move on to the next item of old business, which is update from outreach working group regarding tabling items. Carrie, and we've got stuff on.
I do. So I got to hang out with Linda a few weeks back and just clear out all these bins of all the tabling paperwork and other random documents that we had, and just kind of went through them all. And basically what we kind of came to was we have a lot of material. Some of it is stuff that we're using for current tabling events and things we did this past fall and stuff like that. Others are ones that had cobwebs on them. I'm not totally sure if they're useful or definitely not relevant anymore, and all sorts of kinds of stuff in between. But what I was doing was, this is the most relevant stuff that I was looking through. So I was basically going through a lot of these different documents and kind of going through them, taking a look at the information that's in them, the links that are on them, who we're referencing, and just checking to see how accurate are they, how inaccurate are they, and just kind of noting that so that as we go to print more materials, we can intercept those new additions with some updates there. The ones that I looked through already, and I would pass these around so you can see my terrible handwriting, but I don't think that is beneficial for anyone. But the ones that I looked at first were just the Mason Deeds pamphlets, because it's kind of unique for the stuff that we have. I looked at this one that Lynn and I found on Green Building, and it was one that we put out at one point. So it's information that, at some point we gathered, and it's fairly useful. It's a lot of text and breaking down conflicts and things like that. But it's something that, depending on what kind of priority it is for intern or somebody on the commission, to kind of read through these things, identify, are there more current examples we can use, and just making sure that things that are on them are accurate, like websites and phone numbers and things like that. But then looking at some of these natural landscaping sort of flyers that we've done in the past, we have like a whole set of different ones that are filled with tons and tons of awesome information. And these are, for the most part, like really in good shape. The city update, I know the URL for our website, so that's just broken all over the place, but it's not a huge issue, because you can probably find this if you really want to find this. But as I was looking through these, the main question was really, is there anything that when we're looking through these materials that we want to change how we're talking about it, or change what's in these documents? So, providing shelter, for example, it goes through like a couple different examples of different habitats we can have. And then on the back, it talks a little bit about shelter for nesting birds, and then some guidelines for how to set things up, which I think is all super useful. Is that everything that we want to put in there? Do we want to reassess what all's in here, or do we just want to make sure it's current and we can spend some more? So that's kind of where my head is at in looking at these things. Similarly, there's a list of, for the what to know and where to go. It defines native plants here, Linda. I don't know if it defines non-native. That would have been really handy for me to have 12 minutes ago. But there's all sorts of examples here of selected native plants and recommendations there. My assumption is that this is all still fairly relevant and current, but I do think that this is the kind of stuff that we should figure out who oversees that this, checks the list or aligns with the list that we're referencing for people. And I also talk about different places we can go for native plants. We do have the community farmers market, but there are like 4 markets now that I think we should be including those as well. So I think that this is one that we could easily do some updates for today. But these are all the ones that I've gotten through the two things that I really wanted to share with you though are this funny little flyer that says, get into nature, resource for community members. And it's something that was put together by outdoor recreation and resource management students a while back at IU. I don't know when, but it was for part of the School of Health, Physical Education and Recreation. But it's basically this nice little pamphlet that has like examples of how to engage with the Children in Nature Network, Nature Conservancy, the Let's Move Outside concept, which it might be called like Get Outside Now or something like that, but it's like a really similar concept. Leave No Trace, Indiana DNR Children's Outdoor Bill of Rights, and additional resources. But it's just like nice organizations, and I thought it was like a cute concept of just like, if you want to get involved, you don't know who to go to around here, here's some resources. And then lastly, this polystyrene fact sheet, this is something that was done back in the way back, 2010. But it was back when we were trying to basically encourage businesses to not use styrofoam, especially like takeaway food and things like that. So there's this pamphlet that has all sorts of information about what to do instead, what you can do with your polystyrene, things like that. Obviously, the city's changed what, or not the city, but what you can do with a styrofoam and how recyclable it is kind of different depending on where you go now. But this is, I think, a really interesting one and something that has a lot of value as far as having people kind of engage in sort of the individual level of action and sharing information and things like that. So it's pretty outdated, but I felt like this was one that stood out as being super interesting. Having said all that, there's some materials that need to be updated. There's some materials that I haven't even looked at because they're super duper old. Then there are a bunch of materials that we got from someone else, like the county and things like that, that we basically just need to decide if we even want to ask for new versions of them, or if we just want to say, we've got a lot of materials, we'll be fine. But the thing that I kind of wanted to share with you all is, one, if there's anybody who's interested in doing some of the just like combing through and kind of thinking about what we have in here, if we want to change anything. And then two, kind of get an idea of, is this a priority for somebody to do prior to our next round of outreach stuff, which will probably happen in the springtime. So just kind of hear people's thoughts on like, doesn't feel like it's a huge stress, doesn't feel like it's a big lift, doesn't sound like something you want to do. Sounds like the most important thing I've heard all night. Thank you so much for bringing it up, whatever it is that you feel about kind of looking at these materials, knowing there's some stuff that we need to.
I'm wondering if we can't get the folks on the outreach committee, right? Those of us who said we're interested in it, to maybe split up looking through things and then get together and make cases for like, okay, this one really needs to be updated. Let's make this priority number one. These we need to get rid of. Let's make that priority number two. These ones are fine for right now and they'll just be what they are. And then maybe can split up, okay, these are our 3 top priorities. Let's each do one or whatever.
Further, this one's super ancient, but actually makes me think of this void that we could fill with a totally new one.
Linda, do we have the files for all the ones that we generated? Do we have like the files for where this lives? I know we have the paper, like original documents, but.
Yes, somewhere.
Okay, cool.
On the computer someplace.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that that's a good call of like, if there are folks who want to help with that, this would be mainly reading materials and then helping decide what we do with the material and then potentially going to the file and just typing in new words or typing in notes, something like that. So theoretically, it's pretty easy and it'd be nicer to do when the weather gets really gross and you just want to sit inside and not do anything after, well, not doing much stuff outdoors. Yeah, as far as folks who are interested in either taking a look or weighing in or doing any updates, are there any folks that I can reconfirm? That's awesome, that'd be great. Oh, sweet. Okay, well then, what I think so. To get items into people's hands to look at, Linda, does it make sense to use the digital file, or does it make more sense just to like track you all down and just give you these papers? How varied are these files? Is this one?
Well, gosh, that's a hard question for me to answer because, if it was me, I'd probably rather edit it on a piece of paper and then transfer it to digital, but a lot of
Yeah.
people don't do it that way.
Yeah,
Even if it's not necessarily straight into the editing phase, just as a means of distributing it to people so they can read it. It might be easier to email it out to the interested parties than to try to physically get a copy.
Unless you have them right now. To physically give.
But
them.
like enough copies
I
of
was
each.
gonna say, yeah.
Um, it's- I listened yesterday or today I watched the community access, our
Tax,
competitor and commissions of overlapping, of course, is the Sustainability Commission. And they're doing again, also just sort of trying to figure out ways of outreach, of being able to get the message out. And I really don't see the reason why we don't. I guess I'm leaning more to combining the two commissions. This is, just seems so parallel to each other that we're competing in some ways against each other on waste and anyhow, I'll get into that later, but particularly getting information out. We have to do it. We have to come up with ways of breaking through, not necessarily apathy, but not being aware of what we can do, what individuals can do. What's been done in the past can be a resource, or is a resource. Man,
So, I mean, I have a tough time seeing it as competing, even if there is some overlap in the interests of each group. That's just more attention brought to each subject. And it doesn't really surprise me that any board or commission would struggle with outreach because it's hard. And it was one of the reasons that I was trying to bring up the habitat connectivity plan. How would we even distribute that? Because everyone has a limited number of email contacts that might be interested, or a limited way. If you live in an apartment building and have a bulletin board, you might still not get any eyes on it. So it's a problem that I think everyone has, and I don't see it as a competition between
No,
commissions, but
it's like we're operating parallel to each other without realizing that we can be working together. Is my concern. That,
It's always been that.
amen.
so do you wanna hand those out now? And people can look at them and then they can contact me if they want me to find the digital copy and send it to them? Otherwise, I need the stack, so I know what to find.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's go for it. I'm just gonna hand out, okay. Not really increasing. Okay, I'm just going to, we're gonna do is pass them around and
one specifically with plant lists go in.
and draw a big circle around it. Okay, so I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna pass this stack around, and if you want to take one, whichever one you wanna take, then you can do that. And then a couple of these are repeats. That's okay.
No, you're talking about everybody or the outreach group or what?
Anybody who wants to help with this particular thing, I think go for it. So I've got some that I like already made some notes on them, but you can tell there's a different one. So you can pass the stack around. If you want to go for it.
I mean, there's a little stack there, it'd be, the more the merrier.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I'm gonna put it into it. These are two little folded templates, so. Put that in there. Yeah, paper galore. Cool, I think that sounds like a good next step, to kind of have more eyes on it, because I know I'm looking at it, but I don't know what I'm not thinking or, not considering when I'm thumbing through it and, if it needs to be more simple.
Yeah, I appreciate the time we put into it already. And, thank you for presenting it to all of us and helping get the ball rolling, hopefully. Be in a little bit of a better position to distribute some things come spring. With that, I think we'll move on to new business, which says a reminder of January 2023's project priority agenda. I can only assume that means we're talking about the bucket list.
Yes,
It's January meeting, the bucket list meeting.
yes.
Memory serves that particular agenda item, the bucket list dominates that meeting. It's at least half the time, at least. Do you know when this was put on the schedule, what you or Sam or anyone intended to say specifically about it, or just introduce the concept?
No, just to remind everybody that, to be thinking about what you want the 2023 priority to be. So when we get to the bucket list meeting in January, that's not the first time you're giving a thought to it.
Right, it's somewhat of a homework project between now and our January meeting, come up with an idea or two. We'll probably, guess depending on attendance in the room, likely just present one per person. We're in here, we'll utilize the whiteboard, whichever room we have a whiteboard, so that we can lay out what people's vision are for priority projects within the EC. Can be just about anything from UVO updates to study suggestions, short-term, long-term, whatever you would like to be one of the top few priorities of the Environmental Commission in 2023. So we've got a whole month to kind of ponder that, ask friends or neighbors if we want input, lots of time to figure out what we want to focus on.
And the goal is that this would be a new focus and not like, we have great ideas on how to.
Yeah,
bring in our outreach.
Primarily new ideas, yeah. This isn't to say that we'd abandon anything from the previous year, especially because some things, whether it's a report or whatever it is, might just take a while. And sometimes that does happen, where someone will come in and say, hey, I still want to focus on the rewriting Becky or something, something that we had as a previous goal, they want to propose again as a new one, but new stuff, old stuff, whatever we want to focus on. It doesn't mean we have to just drop anything we've been working on before. I would advise an attempt at being sort of specific. Everyone knows we need outreach, so the suggested item in the bucket list wouldn't be work on outreach. It would be a specific form of outreach, a specific plan, a specific thing we want to focus on outreach about. But yeah, it's wide open. We think we can do it potluck style again.
Sure, why not?
Pre-pandemic, we would often bring in food and eat and talk and have a good meeting. If we're all comfortable doing that again at some time during the month, I'll encourage Sam to send out some kind of sign-up sheet or something like that, so we don't get all of the same item. But I hardly complain if everyone got cookies, but there could probably be some real food too. So that's going to be mostly what January's meeting is. It's going to vary a little bit from the regular structure. I can't remember if we probably sometimes don't even get to reports, because it becomes a very big part of that meeting. So I can't remember very well.
Well, I can't remember if we do reports or not either. I mean, those are all something that we could certainly do via email.
That's true.
All that, because we can put all that in.
Right.
Yeah, the January and the February meetings differ slightly from the other 10 meetings of the year, so prepare for the bucket list.
And in February, we'll be voting on this.
It is less of a time. It takes a lot less time than the bucket list one, so it's still a more traditional meeting.
We might have some hot contests.
You never know. But, Sam will have to do before then, probably. So timeline wise, maybe this would be about the time that he want to appoint the elections committee,
Oh,
except he's not here. Because January feels a little late for that, because it means you'd have to,
right.
it can be done in a month. I just feel like historically, that's maybe been a December item to appoint that kind of election committee. I don't want to do that on his behalf. So maybe we circle back to that, or maybe he can introduce it by email or something
Yeah,
like that. I know that he's at the very end of finals week right now. He's excited to be able to commit a lot more time to the commission following this week. So he's in the home stretch. Does anyone have any questions about bucket list meeting or anything from January that would fall under that banner of new business on tonight's agenda? Okay. Seeing no questions, I suppose we'll move on to reports, starting with the tree commission.
Yeah, well, I need to say something here because I haven't been on the tree commission for about 2 months, and the lady had took over representing us, and now that she's not representing us, I'm willing to go back as a representative, but would anybody else like to do it instead?
When does the tree commission meet?
I think it's the 3rd Monday of each month at about 9:30 in the morning.
It's a no-go from me. 8 to 5 makes that tough.
Sort of background that people have. That are on.
Well, I mean, I've got a doctorate in pharmacology, so. And today we had some training in as a tree steward or something. I forget what the detailed training was. There are a couple of other biology grad students, I think, on the commission. And, I don't know what the chair's background in trees is, do you?
No, it seems like psychology or art or something like that, but she's stepping down.
Oh, she is. Oh,
Laura?
yeah.
Yeah, she's stepping down.
Oh. And how would I, if I'm gonna do it, who would I get in touch with them?
Haskell. Haskell Smith, the new urban forester.
Or do you want to take it over?
And well, background is really fine. It's just, I'll bring back the dead.
Dave, I appreciate you volunteering to do it if we have no other takers, but given that our attendance is only just over half tonight, it might be good for Sam or either of us, for someone to send out an email, seeing if anyone who isn't present might also have an interest in that, and then if we don't get any results before our next meeting, we'd be happy to have you do it. So I'm making a note to get an email out.
Okay, good. Maybe, and you're welcome to take it over if you want to.
So much of their geologists in many ways. My background in taxonomy is awful. Fossils,
No need to make a decision tonight. We'll make sure to put it out there and you can mull it over and we'll buy if you like. Let's see. Following commission would be, county environmental commission. Is that,
That's,
I was gonna say, so you and Sam switched, was that?
yeah,
Okay.
as far as I know, no updates. I saw no signs that there were. I didn't attend.
Okay, so no report from that. We have a report from Ecos, Bloomington Commission on Sustainability.
Because, first part of the meeting was largely Matt Flaherty talking about the budget again. Also, he mentioned that he's leaving the BCOS and he's not sure if he will be coming back in January or when, or Dave Rowell, and I forgot the other person that he said from, Mike. She might be interested in that.
Isabel,
I don't remember which his colleagues he mentioned specifically, because there are several people there. Interesting thing was there was a big issue currently with the city council is the jail and the problems with the existing justice building, having 2 floors of prisoners and for security, and they are under a consent order with the Department of Justice to do something about the overcrowding that they've been kicking down the road. Also, he brought up the fact that the administration, the mayor's office, is basically the one that's really looking into the commissions and not engaging with the council, which is interesting. But they, as far as the BCOS itself, they stress the of course, outreach was one of the major topics. I think one of the more interesting things was that they did vote on establishing the same terminology as sustainability as that of the UN, which from logic seemed like a good way, and also because the UN thing appears to be very legally defined terms. And it seems like the environmental justice again was discussed again. And the waste commission, again, that seemed something that, at least for me, I'm very concerned about waste. And that they have the trial programs and stuff. The other one that I thought was really a topic that, again, our expertise would have maybe actually should have over some of our people and their people where there is overlap on some of their working groups working together, because on things like waste, and they were discussing, they put together a program, but now appears that they're going to back off because it seems that the city and county and IE health, et cetera, as far as heat related troubles, dealing with the heat situation, and they seem to be, we're going down the same rabbit hole we were going with the monitoring of air quality, that they were talking about, starting a project in the gap into it was going to cost. They were going to have to come up with money for equipment, and they seemed like they were throwing their, decided that was not where they were going. They sound so much like us. But, where I heard this before, we talk about riding around town with bikes and checking temperatures and, but there is a system under NOAA. But again, it's one that they have to come up with money.
When they talk about stuff like that are like literally monitoring environmental indicators, like that kind of stuff, does the EC come up? Like, is there like an acknowledgement of like?
It's
a
like
little
they
bit
don't
back off?
exist.
So I do think it's like, it would be a shame to overlap what we're doing because it does take a lot of work or effort or discussion or whatever, and there's so much on sustainability that needs to get covered and so much on the environmental side of things that needs to be covered.
It's interesting, they don't send a member to our meetings the way they do to their meetings.
I literally at one of their meetings, one of them actually said straight up that, they didn't understand why we would be involved with sustainability at all. I'm thinking, like, give me a break. I mean, there was a turf issue. One of the requests I had Spear talked about having matrix organizations to try to break down this where organizations overlap. It was like, what are we doing with talking about sustainability? Why would we be concerned? Which is, what the hell?
Do you think if we invited one of them to come to our meeting, they would respond favorably to that? They're saying, hey, we're talking about outreach, we're talking about monitoring, we're talking about reporting. We would love to have one of you come and hear.
Yeah, I think that they need to, it would be useful for them to, and one of the things that they allow the outside person 3 minutes to speak, and I'm not good. My Asperger's kicks in and I don't know when to shut up. But what can you say in 3 minutes? If you're sitting in on one of their meetings, it's pointless. I mean, I feel a little bit more like a spy.
I think we need to improve communication with them, whether that's during a public comment session or whether that's reaching out to them individually. Since Sam or I could put some attention towards.
I really regret not cutting out, leaving the park earlier in the afternoon, getting home, cleaning up, and going to the meeting. Because I tried to log on and I couldn't log on. For whatever reason, so I ended up watching the video. I could have talked to a couple of people after the meeting. And one of the suggestions I think would have been, why don't you guys send somebody, we need to work together, not.
At least if they're trying to measure heat island effect, trying to measure temperature, they have better devices than our air monitor. At least you can show up with a good old fashioned thermometer and get everything rather than a $200 monitor that tells us we're currently dying. So I envy them on that front. Thank you for your report, because
They were talking about going around town and doing in essence with the temperature, like what we were talking about with riding a bike or walking around, driving around town, according to.
So Matt, if you put a thermometer next to your air quality
Next to your air
monitor,
quality
when you're going out, that'd be great.
Those are different things.
We've been the best on that. Studies are tough. We're going to move on to Environmental Resource Advisory Council, or ERAC. I think you sent minutes around.
I sent minutes for the last two meetings, but we in fact met yesterday. And so for once I can give you an up-to-date report. An important person who usually comes to these meetings from the planning department is Steve Cotter, who tells us about all kinds of things, and he wasn't present because he had just come down with COVID. And so the first thing on my list is that ERAC needs one more member in case anybody would like to be there. The next thing we took up was deer management, and I think I sent you a report on that. They killed 46 this year in 2 weekends. And the interesting thing is that the estimated carrying capacity of the area up there is 10, and they've killed 46. So it's clear that more deer need to be killed. And the way they're monitoring that is by looking at certain plants. And there are areas where they have some where the deer are excluded, and they can see what the plants are in those excluded areas. And then there's a nearby one where the deer can get at it, and you can see the differences. And somebody is monitoring what goes on from year to year with let's see, one of the things is Jack in the Pulp is currently one of the plants that they monitor a lot. But anyway, as I say, they killed 46 deer and the carrying capacity is 10, so it's clear that more deer need to be killed. The next thing that came up was the prescribed burns at Griffey. That wasn't done this year because Indiana has been under a no burn advisory. Their purpose is to reduce maple and beech, and I'm cry about that because I love climax forests, and maple and beech are climax forests, but what they really want to do is to bring back oak and hickory, which are not exactly pioneers, but they're intermediate species, and getting to a climax. And the idea of that, I think, is that oak and hickory provide better food for wildlife and so on. They're hoping to do 2 burns this year, next year, that is, in late March and early April, but it's not known yet whether they can do that. So that's the old business. The new business, they always take up education first, and we talked about various workshops. I didn't make a list of all of them. Many of them were county workshops, and there are a lot of those that are happening this spring. The next thing they talked about was the Polly Grimshaw Trail. I'm not sure exactly where that is. It's near the bypass somewhere near Park Ridge. And didn't catch exactly what they said about it. They talked about the 7th Street Greenway, which is now done. All stop signs have come out. There's a new bike lane. They've planted 34 trees with a 25% survival rate, which doesn't sound too good. 19 to 20 of the trees were lost by vandalism. I think it's young kids that are doing it. The next thing on the list was possible expansion at Park Ridge. The budget doesn't cover much of what might be done there. They're hoping to get more parking in more convenient places there. Next thing on the list was interpretive signs at RCA Park. Rebecca, I forget her last name, she's our Linda. We'll be looking for help to design interpretive signs there. And let's see, C6, the last thing on the agenda was appointments, positions that will be decided as we do here of the chair and vice chair, and that will probably take place in February. Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much. Next report would have been NPOCAC, but that's Sam. Do we have anything for Friends of Lake Monroe?
Oh, well, I think they've got at least 1 and maybe 2 grants now that'll help them to work on best management practices, for one thing. And those will include trying to get people to update their, um, um, memory, their, what's the sewage system that I'm looking for?
Septic tanks.
Septic tanks, yeah, we want to get people to update their septic tanks, that's one of them. Another is to try to get people, the agriculture people, to plant more cover crops, because that produces so much, phosphorus and nitrogen getting into the drainage into Lake Monroe and so on. And, they haven't yet set a committee like they had last time for their last grant to, keep track of what they're doing. And I hope I will be on it. Because I was representing the environmental commission on that, actually. So that's about it for now.
Okay. Thank you very much for that report. Lastly, we have MC Iris, Don.
They haven't met. You know, they won't meet again until, was it February?
Ellen sent something around that said there, wouldn't be, February, there won't be a meeting in December or January.
But they've been doing, wrangles up until now, they're gonna break for, well, maybe until mid-January as far as wrangles. They've been prioritizing, Winslow Sports Park. I thought Southeast Park was bad until I saw what the severity of, conditions with invasives at Winslow. So they were having daily activities of going after Asian bush honeysuckle, and it was and also one of the things, troubling things I brought to the attention of the park staff was that it looked like they were operating a landfill at their maintenance building. There was waste plastic, concrete, PVC pipe, wires. What they were just pushing it over, and when one of the Joanna said the manager is leaving at the end of he's retiring January 1st. That problem just be faced off. But I was kind of like thinking, holy cow. Behind the shed, they were just dozing, dumping stuff into the building.
Where is this again?
You know where the tennis courts are? And on sort of the far south and east side of the park,
Which park?
the Winslow Sports Park. So it's kind of getting
Down
closer.
by the Y?
What the opposite direction from the Y, south of the Y. And there's a gully behind one of the maintenance shed that is broken concrete, asphalt. Anyhow, it was very big piece, chunks of plastic metal. It's obviously fairly recently stuff that then goes into there, which don't just dump in there. But otherwise, that was something that was kind of like, this okay, do things like this. It looked kosher to me, and but and it looked like it was fairly recent. But anyhow, that's one that they were really working. But on the other side of the road, street, the is it Winslow Woods? The other,
Yeah.
yeah, that's really starting to look nice. Really making progress. So again, Cal repair is going to be the target. Basically, year one of most did.
Well, thank you, Don, for the report. That seems to conclude reports, so next would be commissioner announcements. Do we have any commissioner announcements tonight?
I have a question. This is more like a little conversation to throw out. So we talked a few months ago about the reports that are on the website, which are not the website and updates, things like that. We talked about some of the different reports. And I was just thinking about how some of the reports are like more dense than others or haven't been touched in a while. And was thinking about just like, are there certain ones that we are required to update or just would like to because it's important to us? And thinking, I think what would be helpful for someone like me, who's just like in a million places all the time, is if someone came to our EC, one of us came to our EC meeting and said, hey, I'm just gonna do a little walkthrough of what this is and just kind of make sure that you understand what is included in it, what work we did, or what the report says, the work that we did, and just kind of like give a synopsis of it so that we as a commission can say, that sounds really, that's something that I'm glad we did it. I would like us to keep it alive and well, or something like that. But just have more like sort of sharing of what these different reports are, because I know we talk about them a lot, we toss them around a lot, but for folks who are newer to the commission, or just folks who weren't involved when they were originally written, it might be helpful to sort of divvy out how we reintroduce these topics to these reports. So I don't know if that sounds like a really boring idea or just like homework on top of other, homework that people have, but just kind of think of like how to make sure that we're thinking about all the materials that we have and what's important to us.
It does make sense in the same, breath that when we talk about reports early on, to not just use the acronyms to actually let people know we're talking about information on sustainability, we say what we say. So at least on a very introductory level, I think that makes a lot of sense. I'm not sure where we would want to work that into a meeting or anything, especially since people can join or roll off of the commission at just about any time, but I can't think of a set time of the year that would be good to go over those, but I think that's a good idea to look into which of those we feel the need to monitor and update and which ones proud of as they were when they are, and I don't have a lot of information on that personally. Linda has anything to add?
I mean, I was thinking about it, so I was thinking about when we do like outreach, we just talk about what we do to random people in the community, or we attend different commission meetings. Knowing what all we've done and what all has been important to us historically is really, really valuable to say like, oh yeah, we have these different reports that we've done. No, we didn't update it after 2015, but this is what we did and why we chose to do it. Just making sure we all understand that stuff, and there's so much, and there's so much that I can't expect that every single one of us is going to read everything and fully understand the depth of what it says or means or implies for the city, or whatever. But just think about like, is there a way to kind of spread out how we make sure that we're all on the same page as far as like, what are our reports? Why are they important? What do we do with them? What did we do with them at some point? So it's really not like make a decision now, but just something I was thinking about to ensure we're all understanding why we're here and what we've done.
I'll throw out, I think that's an interesting idea to bring up before January, right? When we're doing our bucket list item, because I think it's a little bit of shame to think that every year we pick a new focus and then it's just like, oh, but that was last year's focus. And so we put a lot of work into it, but now it's just over there. And so maybe it is valuable for us to look through those, even just for ideas of these were important ones. Maybe it's out of date, maybe it's still really valuable. This should be our focus again, or right, eventually we'll want to cycle those focuses. We didn't settle air quality this year, but
It's kind of a compilation of all of those, history of environmental issues. And where we're out of. So that might be a place to start.
Yeah.
Any other announcements? Anybody? All right, well, thank you everyone for being here tonight. I'm going to adjourn the meeting at what appears to be 7:27. Everybody have a good night.